Looping. You guys ever loop? We talked about putting it into smaller pieces, but do you ever loop? Okay? Where you like take one measure or two measures? Do you loop from like the first beat of the measure to the last beat of the measure and then back? Or do you go across the bar? You go across the bar? You have any idea what I'm talking about? You do? All right, well, let me use visual aids because sometimes my yapping might not get you there. Okay, you got your measure. It's noodle, 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 whatever it is, and you're going across the bar. So what I would do is, if I'm breaking this down, is I would drop the first beat, the first half of the beat. I would always start practicing on an upbeat, and I'll bring that across and then loop it back. And that's the way that I practice it, as opposed to just breaking down things on a bar. Always moving back to the beginning, dropping the first note and using the first note of the next measure in place of that first note. That helps me get things flowing a little bit more. So I'm always thinking of moving things ahead instead of just in chunks. You know, it's one of the things that I learned from marching band. Forgive me, I'm going to step outside of the clarinet geek world and move into the marching geek world here for a second. When you're learning sets in marching band, okay, you're going from chart A to chart B. It's always fine to go 13, 14, 15, 16, close. Okay, I'm there. I'm on my set. But what happens after that? You've got to move again. So what I do with marching bands when I'm working with them is they'll go 13, 14, 15, 16, 1. And they'll actually take that first step. Not just extension, they'll actually take that first step into the next one because it gets you thinking ahead and moving into the next set. And it's the same reason that I do this when I'm practicing. It gets me thinking ahead and moving into the next lick, the next phrase, whatever it's going to be. Make sense? Just nod your head vigorously and I'll know you're all awake. All right, great. Okay, so we've got, let's say, for all intents and purposes, we've got our new piece on our stand in front of us. We've got the notes under our fingers, okay? You can at least play the notes surgically. There they are. There's nothing really to them, but the notes are there. I can physically get through this piece of music. Congratulations, that's usually the easy part. Okay? Now we have to take that surgically prepared muscle memory on the instrument, convert that into an actual performance where you're going to get on stage and play for other people. Okay? What would be the next step? You guys probably don't do a lot of this, but I know your band director will. You know, you want to figure out what the basic tone, and when I say tone, I don't mean play with a beautiful tone. When I say tone, I mean the feel, the style of a piece. You want to kind of get a feel for what that piece is, or what was going on. What are some tools that you may use as an individual, or Mr. Nutty, what things that you might use in a classroom to get your kids into the, you said you just played La Fiesta Mexicana?
Yes.
Okay. What were some things that you did when you were working on that piece to get them prepared to play Aztec dance?
We listened to a reference recording by the Marine Band.
Okay. So you do a lot of listening. Okay, that's usually first step for 99% of musicians out there. You also, did you talk about read at all, or?
We talked about the piece as it relates to the culture and the events that inspired the writing.
Great. So for me, because my band literature is pretty much a 20th century phenomenon, the clarinet repertoire, even though we're not a really old instrument, I think the clarinet's only about 250 years old in reality, so flute players, you've got like a few thousand years on us as far as the repertoire goes. But it does go back a little bit further than that. And if I'm playing a piece, say I'm going to do a recital and I'm going to play Brahms, I'm going to play Mozart, and I'm going to play Abîme des Oiseaux by Olivier Messiaen, which is a 20th century piece. I know you're all thinking, you know, I was just listening to that. I have it on my iPod, yeah. This is going to be, thanks. How am I going to go into approaching each one of those pieces of music? First, I'm going to look at the composer. All right? I'm going to try to figure out what the composer was thinking, what the composer was after. Now, in a lot of cases, like Mozart, Bach, Beethoven, even Brahms to some degree, you also have to take them in context. You have to look at what else is going on in the musical world. What were their influences? Okay, so I may study if I'm doing a piece by Bach. Say it's a transcription for clarinet of an oboe piece, and I'm doing Bach. I'm going to go back and listen not only to Bach oboe pieces, but I might go back and listen to a wide array of Bach. And if you're going to do H.O.N. Reed, correct? Okay. If you're going to go back, if you're going to do La Fiesta Mexicana, you may actually listen to another piece by H.O.N. Reed, although I can't really think of it right now. That was pretty much his big claim to fame, if I remember right. So I would go back and listen to other things that those composers may have done to try to put it into historic context as much as possible. Transcriptions, it does happen, especially in the band world. You'll have a lot of orchestral transcriptions that you may be playing. I think I saw something over there on your rack, if I remember right. Maybe I'm losing my mind, I don't know. But a lot of times clarinets and flute players, we get to pretend we're violinists during those pieces. So you actually kind of have to think like a violin player without the extra scarf. The question came in is what's the best grade level to start a student on the Rose etudes? I played Rose number 1 from the 32. I use these primarily as phrasing studies as opposed to technical exercises. So I'll usually start kids on Rose in 9th or 10th grade. I'll use the 40s, which is more of a noodle book for just learning how to get around the horn. Okay, sorry to diverge there, but I wanted to get that out of the way before I forgot about it. Okay, so we're going to look at context, look at things that are going on. We're going to look at the time period. This may seem a little bit funny, but I have this goofy philosophy that the way people dress affects the art that they have. Seriously. So if you go back and you look at, I know there are some doubters out there, but if you go back and you look at Mozart, what were they wearing? They were wearing wigs, and they were wearing really uncomfortable buckle shoes, and they were wearing, men with tights, all right, and they were wearing, knickered breeches and all kinds of layers, and women, oh good heavens, they were wearing corsets. You guys know what a corset is? Yes. I can't even imagine, okay? They're wearing corsets. So everything during the classical period was amazingly constrained. It was amazingly well thought out. It was amazingly well packaged. In a lot of ways, that's the way you have to approach the classical music of that era. If one thing that I get myself in trouble when I'm playing Mozart is I tend to be told that I put too much into it. When you're playing Mozart, you kind of just play what's on the page and you're good to go because he put everything in it that he wanted. All right? You look at Beethoven. You guys have seen pictures of Beethoven, okay? How did Beethoven look? That dude, yeah, he looked intense, but yeah, he looked like he never saw a mirror in his entire life, right? And in a lot of ways, that's the way Beethoven's music is. It's very compartmentalized from a thematic standpoint, but there's a lot of underlying passion that you can really throw into Beethoven. And you just look at the way he dressed. I mean, he was very disheveled and everything was just kind of all over the place. Fast forward that up to Brahms, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but Brahms, whenever I approach Brahms, I think of a big, fat, hairy guy wearing wool. And that's kind of the sound that I'm after. I want a really thick sound. I want the phrases to be long and dare I even say kind of a lush sound. And if you look at Brahms, I mean, he just looked like a big woolly guy. And that's kind of the approach. Stravinsky, you familiar with Stravinsky? Okay, 20th century composer. Very, very mathematic in his approach. Not quite to 12 tonal, and we won't get into that, but very mathematic in his approach to writing music. And if you see a picture of Stravinsky, he had his little glasses on, and he was very reserved. And that's what it was. It was very just neat and on the page, and you just try to lay it down. Let's see, we have another question that just came in. Question is, it would be great to be a professional musician. However, it seems there are not many opportunities out there. In that case, then what? Is that what this is? We'll shift gears here again. Professional musician. That can apply to a lot of things. I consider myself a professional musician, but I don't earn my entire living anymore by playing the clarinet. In fact, it's a very small part of what I do now. There are tons of different opportunities that being a professional musician will offer you. becoming a music educator, band director, orchestra director, choir director, is the one that most people think of. I really want to play in the symphony, but I really am not good at auditioning, so I'll go teach band. Not saying that's the case here, so please don't misconstrue that. I'm just talking the usual concept. There are a lot of ways that you can, teaching, no matter what level of player you're going to be, whether you're playing principal in the New York Philharmonic, or you're doing a lot of what I do where you play chamber music in the Chicago area, Northwest Indiana, you're going to have students. You're going to need students to supplement your income in a lot of cases, and to give you an outlet for your own growth. Me personally, I never really understood half of what my teachers were telling me until I heard myself telling a student in a lesson the same thing that my teacher told me. And my students always laugh because I have those moments like, I'll kind of go, oh, cool, I get it now. And it may be 20 years after the fact. But something that student will do in a lesson, I'll respond to it, and then I'll understand what that poor soul that was trying to get me to do 20 years ago was trying to get me to do. Works out really well. In a lot of cases, if you're going to be a professional musician, because the question is correct, there are 400 musicians for every job in any one area. It's kind of like my joke is always, yeah, I'm a really good waiter because I'm a musician. You go to LA and you're going to be waited on by an actor, okay? If he's not an actor, chances are he's probably a musician that is trying to get a gig somewhere. Now, because there's that glut, you have to be creative. There are a lot of things that you can do. I put together a trio, piano, cello, clarinet, and we gig around quite a bit, but you have to do a lot of self-promotion. But there are opportunities out there. You pretty much have to find them. And it doesn't hurt if you can write a good grant, because a lot of people want to give money to the arts, and they have it, and they're looking for people to give it. You just have to know how to go and get it and pull that money back in, whether it's for composition or bringing in clinicians or getting new sousaphones for your marching band. If you can find the money is out there. You just kind of have to look for it and then be the brightest bulb and know how to get them to give it to you. Okay? Great. So we were talking about tone. We were talking about style of a piece, just general before you even really pick up your instrument and try to dig into it. Things that you're going to do. I'm going to listen to recordings. I'm going to study the fashion of the day. I'm going to look at other works that a composer may have done, just to kind of give you an idea, a base from which to jump off, so you're not just jumping in blind and saying, okay, I've got all these notes on the page and I have to play them, but I really don't know exactly what I'm getting myself into. Okay, so you've got it, you've got a good idea. We're doing this new concerto that we're going to perform, and I've got my music. I now have the notes down. I've got a fairly good historical reference for the composer, or in your case, being a band, you may have actually had the composer come in at times. I saw that you went to the Western Spring Conference, so you had at one point worked with a composer, at least there.
Yes.
Okay? I don't remember who it was, but in 2003, but you get the composer up and they can tell you straight from their mouths. And in a lot of cases, as a musician, that's your job, is to try to figure out what the composer wants and then transform it and recreate it. All right, so we have all of that out of the way. Now what do?